Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Reputation Room. I'm delighted to have our first Spanish guest, Carlota Gomez de la Hoz. Why Carlota? Well, I'm sure you will understand why her after hearing today's conversation. I must say I have a special connection to Carlota and her career journey. Perhaps because she and I have been on parallel paths, born and raised in Spain, and at some point deciding to go bigger and broader. Carlota spent 17 years at Bayer, and only 18 months ago, she went back home to lead corporate affairs and sustainability for HIPRA, a Spanish biotechnology company specialized in vaccines and biological products. Family-owned company where she essentially is building and professionalizing the corporate affairs function. When Carlota and I spoke to prepare for today's chat, she made it very clear how important purpose, leadership, and impact is for her. So we will make sure to cover that and many more topics in today's conversation. Carlota, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Javier, for having me. I'm really looking forward to a joyful and candid conversation today.
Sounds good. So then, Carlota, we are happy to have you with us today. I will address purpose first, since you made sure to make a point about that. What does having a purpose mean to you?
So thanks for the question, Javier, because this is very close to my heart. And I've always had a heart of an activist. So I'm making sure that I use my roles and currently as well to make a long-lasting impact in what I do. I'm really looking forward to transform companies, to make an impact in society through corporate affairs. And I do believe that we have a very transformational role. So I'm making sure that I use the tools and the activities to make a long-lasting impact for the company and for society. This is what I enjoy the most.
Good. I'll be interested in understanding, Carlota, how you do that in a company like Bayer versus how you do that in a company like HIPRA, right? Two completely different animals. So we'll discuss that later in the conversation. But first, let's talk about your career with Bayer, right? You led comms for crop science in Europe. Then you led issues management. At the time that Bayer acquired Monsanto, meaning that you likely were at the center of very critical, highly visible topics and issues, right? What can you tell us about those days and the work that you did?
Thanks for the question, Javier. Let me step back a little bit. When I joined Bayer in Spain, I was leading communications and public affairs for the Spanish organization. And I had quite a shock when I heard that Bayer was willing to acquire Monsanto. We thought that was really a transformational step. And what I did, Javier, was to raise my hand. I want to be part of that, process. I wanted to be part of shaping one of the world's bigger company transformation ever. So then I was offered the role of crop science communications in Europe at a time where, of course, these two big companies were coming together. So I always say, Javier, that I was delighted to take that challenge. It was extremely intense. I don't know whether I would do it again. I mean, that was really the most intense period of my life, definitely. And of course, I'm not going to disclose, certain things that I will keep it, for me. And of course, to respect of my former employer. But I would say maybe let me give a little bit of color of things that are of public knowledge. Bayer is a German-based company, European, with a European heart. And of course, Monsanto at that time was a US-American company. So one of the big questions, and I think, Javier, this is always, is something that we always need to manage and engage, is with people and organizations where different cultures live together. And one of the biggest questions outside, and it was also in the press, was whether Bayer and Monsanto would be able to culturally merger. And I think that was right very clear from the beginning. That was that was a challenge. Because other companies didn't manage to do that in the past. So big corporations who merge, especially a European company with a US-based company, only for the culture, were not able. So I would say that was one of the main topics that we needed to definitely take care of and engage properly. And I can say, from what I also see, the company managed. But that was one of the main aspects that we took carefully. The second thing I would say was the big question mark in the public opinion with that big acquisition was whether Bayer would stay Bayer after the acquisition of Monsanto. The values, because the stakeholder engagement model was different. I think Bayer was perceived in a very different way compared to Monsanto at the stakeholder engagement model. And there was, of course, many discussions how Bayer should have addressed this, and I think we addressed this in the most constructive way possible. And at that time, what we did was to commit to a stronger, even more transparent engagement model. So we raised the bar on how we would engage with a different group of interests.
Tell me more about this concept of a stakeholder engagement model. Give us, just for clarity for the audience, give us a couple lines as to what that exactly meant in that context.
So I would say that Bayer has always had a very proactive, caring engagement model. So at the time of engaging with different stakeholders, be it media, public opinion, to a much more, let's say, listening mode, Bayer has always been very caring, willing to listen to different type of stakeholders. So definitely clients, Javier, is a very important stakeholder. Public opinion, media, communities, NGOs. So we had definitely a very broader, way of engaging with multiple stakeholders. I think that Monsanto, focused so much on customers and deliver, the most breakthrough innovation, that probably they forgot to engage with other types of stakeholders, right? And that I would say that was one of the main. Again, it's not only my opinion, but it was a broader perception of how Monsanto was engaging with stakeholders. And definitely, don't get me wrong. I mean, clients are very, very important. But when you bring science into society, really, really transformational science. Science that has a very important impact in regulations, in politics, in society. We need to make sure that the different perspectives are being heard, and this is one of the main elements that I also bring always in my job.
Got it. So the way I take it is basically what you're talking about in terms of a stakeholder engagement model is another cultural clash between the two companies, right? In terms of how do we go about engaging the broader or engaging beyond your direct customer, right?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting point. Yeah.
And this is something that probably is very present in many companies, right? That especially B2B companies that tend to focus entirely in the direct customer.
Yeah.
And definitely stakeholders is a broader concept. And if you don't manage the different, stakeholders, as I mentioned, media, public opinion, regulators, NGOs, institution, your neighborhood, right? If you don't have a broader spectrum of stakeholders to engage, definitely you can have certain certain limitations. That's why, especially, and I've spent nearly my entire career in the pharmaceutical industry, in the biotechnology. It is of is absolutely critical, Javier, that we see the stakeholder engagement as a broader spectrum
Yeah.
of groups.
And after that very intense period, you went on to lead international and regional comms at Bayer, with Bayer being having three very distinct businesses: pharma, consumer health, and crop science. That sounds complex and especially challenging. So what was that job like?
So it was very intense as well, but I love, intensity. I love, as I mentioned before, getting out of my comfort zone and embracing challenges. And I have to say, for me, was I always said at that time, of course now as well, but I had, one of the most beautiful jobs in the organization, because I had the opportunity to connect, guide, and lead the communications with all my colleagues around the globe, except from the two headquarters. So to have the opportunity to engage and connect and guide colleagues from India, from China, from Latin America, from South Africa, from all parts of Europe, was a unique opportunity to bring all these perspectives. And here I want to take the opportunity, Javier, to mention how important it is for corporate affairs, similarly to what we just discussed, to listen to different perspectives. So, when we operate in a global corporation, what does a global narrative look like? What is the narrative from our reality in China, in India, in Latin America, as I mentioned? So in order to ensure that a global company is connected with different type of audiences with different sensitivities, you need to listen. It sounds very basic, but it's not always the case. So listen to different perspectives is absolutely critical. So my job was to ensure that the different points of view, the different sensitivities, were heard at the headquarters and the other way around, that we were giving, the right direction. And again, it was actually the direction, because how to get to that goal in, Vietnam looks very different from, what the colleagues needed to do in Mexico, because the perception of a company absolutely differs from country to country. The acceptance of a specific business definitely different from country to country. So it is so important that we have one voice, one direction, but with definitely different colors, right, in the different markets. And how to get there, only the colleagues on the ground know more, how to get there. But definitely there's a need of giving guidance and direction, and to do this bottom-up approach, to listen to different, realities, in order to build that global narrative.
Yeah, I can relate so much, because the is this unresolved tension between a global narrative, which is now, not now, it's been for a few years now, the obsession of every company, having a global consistent narrative, and the local execution and delivery of that narrative, right? And that tension, I can totally see how that takes up, the majority of your time in that role, because every country wants that execution to be relevant on the ground, right? And to what extent do you allow that to happen versus sticking to that global narrative, right? So that tension is always there and super, super interesting to manage in the day-to-day, right? Good. So Carlota, you then went to HIPRA, family-owned company. You go back to your origins, and I want to understand, talking about reputation, right? How different the conversation you were having at Bayer about reputation is than the conversation that you're having at HIPRA.
Very good question, and not easy to answer, but I would say in many aspects is quite the same. Probably because I operate in the same industry. So I would say that in the pharmaceutical biotechnology industry, reputation and acceptance and this license to operate that we need is absolutely the same. But of course, the context and the situations are completely different. So coming from a company with a very well-known brand, known, I would say, in the entire globe, a company with a absolutely huge dimension. So coming from a company around 100,000 employees, of course, big numbers in terms of turnovers, going to a company who is not so well known, definitely, even sometimes, in our home country. So I would say these are two complete contexts: big brand, big corporation, a brand that is not so well known, for the time being. Definitely, we have made extremely significant steps in the last year since I joined in terms of visibility and knowledge of HIPRA. But these are two very different things. On the other side, I have to say, in a big corporation, the internal structures is a challenge, and the structures and processes are there for one very specific reason. But here, the structures are extremely lean. The processes are very fast. There's so much, speed and empowerment and willingness to take, a very rapid impact, that I would say these are two completely different contexts. But the perception that reputation is absolutely essential for the industries that we operate, there's no questions. Definitely, I would say that, of course, the knowledge of what is reputation, how reputation is being built by the top management, of course, differs in a company who has been, of course, developing that role for decades, compared to the company that I'm currently in, that of course we are in a different phase. But the respect for the importance of reputation, I would say, is very similar.
So working now in a much faster and empowering environment must feel like being in heaven.
I have to admit, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoy. Of course, if I would have not enjoyed Bayer, I wouldn't have stayed for 17 years. And I have to say, I miss my former colleagues. Don't get me wrong, and that was the most difficult decision that I ever made, to leave Bayer. But I really, really appreciate to be part of an extremely lean organization, very fast. This is something I really, really, really enjoy.
Nice.
And probably where I see the biggest difference is from going to a public trade company to a family-owned, but not because it's owned by a family, but that we are not on the stock market, and this makes, Javier, a complete different change. I'm not going to say that one is better than the other, but this gives you, in my current role, this gives you another a different perspective. This also gives you a complete different position in the face of, especially I spend very much of my time engaging with government, because it's very much needed in my current role. And there's a very favorable, engagement, when we say that we are family-owned company, not traded. Because I think governments and public opinion, they also see that we can think of generations. We are not taking decision based on the stock price, day in, day out. So this gives you another position when engaging with different stakeholders.
And what was your mindset going into the role? So how did you land in the role and started having the conversation with the board or the executive team about what was needed?
So it was pretty easy, I would say. I think there was a big tipping point at HIPRA. So this company has been in the animal health business for 50 years, and during COVID times, they stepped to the human health. And that was absolutely transformational. And that was a decision that was not planned, because COVID hit, and they decided that they had a responsibility, the ethical responsibility, the moral responsibility to do something about, because HIPRA was developing vaccines for animals for, as I said, more than 50 years, having deep knowledge of different pathogens, including coronavirus in animals, and they felt that they needed to do something about. We just cannot, stay and look what's going on without putting our R&D knowledge, our capabilities, our testing also capabilities, and our production capabilities, to address and to be also part of the solution of such, challenging situation that we all faced. So, shifting from animal health business and, stepping into the human health, that was completely transformational. That means that from literally one day to another, they had to engage from primarily, customers, farmers, to public opinion, media, governments, institutions of different sorts. So I would say they were kind of managing in the best way possible for maybe, since, COVID times until 2024. And at some point they said, well, we need someone who is very knowledgeable, very professional at engaging with these very sensitive stakeholders. This is not something easy. This is something very impactful. And we needed to do it and to manage this function at the right level. So the top management, and of course, also the ownership of the company, they realized that this is a very transcendental function, that this position needed to be at the top of the organization, helping, guiding, shaping the direction of the company. So I would say, when you are, being, let's say, requested and invited, to join this role, I would say that I joined in a very sweet moment, where they realized that role was absolutely critical and absolutely needed. So I would say it was easy. But the mandate was, please help us, to manage all these intangible assets. And this is another element, right? I think currently the intangible assets are one of the main concerns for CEOs around the globe. And they realize, Javier, that certain things that happened or did not happen in the last few years was because these intangible assets were not managed in a, let's say, diligent way.
I see.
And they said, well, now we realize some doors were not open for that. Certain action did not happen because of that. And the common denominator was these intangible assets. that we don't see them, but they are absolutely critical and absolutely transformational, like, reputation, knowledge, acceptance, etc.
Good. So let me now shift from the mandate and the context that you provided so brilliantly into what good looks like. So what does good look like, and how did you define that for your CEO?
Mhm. I would say for the entire, let's say, management team. Um, One of the main roles that I have is to bring the political dimension, the social dimension, also the, share with the people department, also the employee sentiment as well in the decision making. Um, I think that's absolutely critical, right? How, especially in the fragmented world that we are living, Javier, is absolutely critical that we bring this dimension to the decision making, and that we bring this at a very early stage, right? Because probably this is one of the most challenging elements that a lot of people who work in the corporate affairs area, that in some cases we are being we are brought at the later stage, and that's too late. So bringing these elements, how reputation is being built, what are the political or geopolitical elements or social elements that need to be considered before a decision is being taken. This is absolutely critical. So that's one thing. And a second thing is definitely to put a plan in place, right? To have a structured plan in place. This is not just, well, my gut feeling tells me that tomorrow we need to do X, Y, Z, right? This is about, making a good stakeholder engagement plan, identifying, the critical stakeholders that we need to engage. We need to build, a very solid, relevant narrative that we all need to share. And we need, of course, action and budget in place, to achieve our goals. So to put, a much more relevant narrative, to put a very concrete stakeholder mapping, and to put action and budget behind.
How often do you go back to the management team to talk progress of your team's work?
On a regular basis, we have delegated commissions from the board of directors, where right from the beginning, we engage with them. We propose a plan, in order to agree on the goals and to agree on the plan. And I would say at least 2-3 times per year to discuss progress. But of course, on a much more regular basis, I have very frequent discussions with my peers at the executive board as well, on how things are going, and this is a very fluent, recurrent discussions.
That's good. We discussed something similar with Dennis Larson in one of our episodes, where one of the critical success factors for reputation becoming an enterprise-wide accountability and not just the corporate affairs one is whether or not reputation and the work that the teams do is present in the executive team's agenda consistently over time, right? So I think you are walking the talk there for sure. I was gonna say, yeah.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, I think, at least for me was, I wouldn't say easy, but quite natural to have very foundational discussions. What is reputation? What is not? How reputation is being built right from the beginning, because I was coming more, from as a newcomer, a function that that was more or less being put in place for the first time because they brought together a former communication team that was in place. They also we include public affairs that was a brand new area for the company, and also the sustainability part that is also very much linked to to corporate affairs, and that is very helpful, to be honest, to have this combination of two roles, corporate affairs and sustainability officer. They both have a lot of synergies in a very positive way. So we had a lot of foundational discussions about this, and they were actually very grateful to have for the first time one person with a lot of experience who was like you know, mm, having these discussions and guiding them. I think they were very, very happy to have this partner in crime, I would say. But absolutely, reputation, acceptance, visibility, this is not something that we can, in our own function, build in an isolated way. We need everyone in the company. Actually, also, we need third parties, of course, all this, the advocacy as well. We need third parties also to advocate ideally also on behalf of us. So everyone is needed, and our role is much more, it has always been for me, but definitely it has become much more guiding, empowering, giving the direction, giving the vision, how we would like to become in the future, how we want to be perceived, how we want to make political incidents, how we want to be as a relevant company. And this is something that we should do, and not necessarily to execute, because at least we have thousands of employees that can serve as a multipliers, and we need to be smart about it.
Got it. Do you have a go-to catchy personal definition of what reputation is?
Probably, yeah, reputation would be a coherence between what you say and how you are being perceived, right, in a positive way. Is this consistency, right, of what you are preaching and what others are perceiving about you definitely in a positive way.
Awesome. Good. Listen, Carlota, working now and operating in the vaccines business, it's probably one that expands beyond health, right? Vaccines into the defense conversation, budgets, geopolitics, and all that. How does that change the way you lead?
Very good question. I would say one of our main roles, Javier, is to read the context where we operate, and to help the organization to have a relevant role in the evolving context that a company operates. So needless to say, for example, you mentioned current geopolitics in a fragmented world. I think we need to help and guide the different organizations to be seen as a corporation of systemic relevance for the societal challenges that we are facing. And you mentioned, for example, the current moment of strategic autonomy or defense, right, that we are facing in Europe. So how we are positioning our company, right, as a relevant player in the current geopolitical context. This is something, I believe, of extreme importance to anticipate and help and to be proactive at showing the role in the different contexts that we have. And I think, it's becoming very clear that many companies are building new roles, such as, geopolitics or defense within the current, within the public affairs departments, because this has become also very, very, very critical for management boards.
And you have been building a team for now 18 months, and now you are building a team in a time where artificial intelligence, geopolitics, all these things are very much determining how we need to think about our job. So, as you build your team, what are the skills that you're looking for?
And I try to build a team, of course, that is that they complement each other. Because we need, going back to the beginning of our conversation, diversity and inclusion is of critical importance for everyone, for all the functions, but definitely for the corporate affairs role is absolutely critical. So, of course, we just cannot select people that really thinks the same, brings the same experience, behaves the same. So we need to be very diverse in that sense, and of course include the different skills into the job. So what I personally look for is people who has good judgment, people who has braveness, people who has a strong vision on how things should work and how our function should work, people who is proactive, and people who wants to really make an impact. Maybe I'm quite summarizing, Javier, what we have been discussing during the conversation. Of course, the knowledge, this is for granted, right? That to have certain experience, either in in communications, in government affairs, or of course in the case of sustainability. But for me, this is not the most critical skill, the knowledge. This is something that you can learn, or of course you can get from different sources. But the attitude is, for me, the most important. The right attitude to, as I mentioned, to willing to make an impact, willingness to transform, the different situations, to be visionary, to be proactive. That's, for me, the most important skills at selecting people.
How nervous does artificial intelligence make you?
Not that much. I don't know whether this is good or bad. I think this is a tool for people who work in our function to let's say amplify, to boost our skills. But we also need to be cautious in the sense that these tools might also make certain bias. They might have a certain bias, right? Sometimes if you ask the generative AI to make a summary of a 400-page document, depending on the tool that you use, they can also omit certain information. And well, you need to be also critical why this information has been omitted, and to countermeasure, right, this bias. So I would say it's a tool, but it's not the ultimate tool. I mean, I think as I mentioned, our judgment, to be a critical mindset is absolutely important. So I'm not so concerned that they are going to fully replace us. They are going to amplify and boost our skills. And we definitely need to make a good use of that.
Interestingly enough, Carlota, going back to the skills that you listed, all of them are what we could call soft skills. And because they are soft, they are not less important. I'm with you. Why is that? Why? Because I do the same. When I think about my teams, my people, my talent, I'm always obsessed with the attitude, with the potential, with how much are these people or is this person willing to go all in. right? For what matters. Don't you think that we are neglecting some of the basics?
I mean, as I mentioned, for me, these are really hard skills. Going back to the beginning of our conversation, that I think I have a heart of activist. One of the things that during my career, people have, personally, separately mentioned to me is that thanks for raising the voice. Thanks for making the tough call. Thanks for bringing your perspective. Because not everyone, is in the same position to make, to give that feedback. I don't know, maybe I'm too unconscious, but maybe I have a strong convictions how things should be done. And in some cases, I've made a tough call. Is when certain things were suggested in the way that I believe was not the right path, not maybe the ethical part, not in the way that would resonate, to our audience. If we were not being honest, I said, this is not going to go in my name, with my name. I'm not going to sign off this. For me, really, drawing the red line is absolutely important. But to be honest, I don't think that everyone is in the same position for many reasons to make that tough call for me. And again, I've probably, this has happened a couple of times in my career, but this has happened. And I have to say, sometimes, it's not easy to be the Joan of Arc, but it is, Javier, is the only way I know, and the only way I can behave. For me, there are certain red lines that I'm not in the position to cross, not in my name.
And I commend you for that, Carlota. I wanna go back to something you said that I thought was really good. This idea of what good looks like is bringing the political, the social, the employee dimension into the strategic and company decision making early on, right? And in order for you to do that, and for your team to do that, to be able to do that, you guys need to be fully attuned to what's going on out there. How does that happen?
Being connected, right, to different types of sources. We internally in our department, we have, of course, the classic media, also social media. We also have in the company competitive intelligence tool, where also we gather, a lot of insights. I have to say, I would love to develop further the insights generation, function. Is probably is something that I would like to work on in the future. But yeah, to have good listening tools in place.
Yes.
And identifying those absolutely critical, relevant, stakeholders that are meaningful for your business. And maybe let me add here, to be brought right in the beginning of the conversations. I think what is absolutely critical, and I want to also be, let's say, constructive in the sense that corporate affairs or communications, we have not always been excellent at talking the language of business.
Mm-hmm.
And this is absolutely critical. If we don't, master the language of business, if we don't understand, deeply the business, it will be very difficult that the business sees us, eye to eye.
Yes. Fully agree. And I'll make sure to make a point about this one when we promote this episode for sure. I was going to say, Carlota, with your company now having that competitive intelligence tool that you mentioned, that's a great first step, right? Because you have a place where you can go to generate the insights. However, you have a desire to be a lot better from an insight generation perspective. What's the gap? Why that gap?
Mm-hmm. Um, I mean, in our case, because we are growing as a function. I mean, in certain aspects, we are still quite foundational. I think probably we are listening to certain markets, but not all markets that are relevant to us. Um, so I would say because we are still in a quite foundational moment. Mhm.
Got it.
But we have certain tools in place, but also we need people to that spends time at analyzing this data, and that brings back this data to the right decision making as well. So I think we need to be more intentional at taking decision based on that data as well.
Yeah. I have a few more questions, and we will wrap up soon. Okay.
Mhm.
So I wanna ask you, what is that skill that is critical today that nobody ever told you to develop to be successful in your career?
I want to think that this braveness that I mentioned probably to be where I am today, to be able to voice, the right perspective, the right feedback at the right time. And I did not definitely expect that. On the other side as well, I mean, corporations are always complex, Javier, and sometimes the ability to understand and accept and support certain decisions, even if you think are not the best ones or the fairer ones, it's something that I'm still on it. And I did not expect that, because I always tend to think, well, no. I mean, the logics will prevail, and sometimes there are certain, of course, internal situations that are not always logical, and yeah, that's also important. Mhm.
Well, they say that there are a couple big reasons for people to leave their jobs or companies. One is the misalignment between personal values and company values. And the other one is your manager, but we won't go there. I'm not going to put you on the spot. Good. Listen, one more thing, Carlota. Let's go back to the Carlota when she was 22, 23 years old. What would you tell her, knowing everything you know today?
Hmm. That's a very good question. Yeah, to be patient. To be patient. I always want to run fast. I want to make a tangible impact. Um, I would say, yeah, you need to be patient. This is something that definitely I would remind to my younger self.
Nice. We've covered a lot of topics. Anything I have not asked that you'd like to discuss?
Um, at the end of the day, we have covered a lot of elements that I wanted to bring along in the discussion. Maybe to remind ourselves that we need also to have fun. I mean, we need to, let me say, rock and roll in our functions. Let's not forget that, as we mentioned, I want to bring my vision, the purpose. So we also need to have fun. Because big part of our life is also our job. The job is not our entire life, but it's part of, big part of our life. So let's also remind ourselves to have fun, enjoy, be respectful with others, grow together and have fun.
Let me give you another chance because I can feel and see how passionate and strong you are. So let me ask you specifically or directly about the principles, the values that you operate under.
Mhm. Um, for me, there's no shortcuts. Javier, I really don't like, when people try, go to your, on your back and try to find shortcuts. For me, that's not acceptable. I think we can have tough discussion, but open discussion, straightforward discussions. For me, this is something, if you want to work with me and collaborate with me, that's absolutely critical. And definitely to put people at the center of our management. That's a principle that for me is very, very, very important. Yeah.
Good. One last question. In 10 years from now, with everything that is going on today, how do you envision our work, corporate affairs, reputation management evolving in 10 years from now?
Well, I do hope, and I think we are in a special moment, I would say. If we look back in the last 20 years, I think this function has grown of importance, of relevance. There's a lot to do yet. As I mentioned, I think there's still room for improvement at talking the business language, at believing that we have a top managerial, function. But I can only see this function, growing and growing, in bigger importance. Definitely having a seat at the table of, management teams, and being a critical function to shape strategic plans. At the end of the day, a business does not operate isolated in a commercial market. Yeah, a company is also a corporate citizen that operates in a society. So it's absolutely critical that, as we mentioned today, we get the social perspective, the political perspective, right in the conversation, in the plan. So, because this is not about taking a decision on the business and implementing no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
This is about giving direction where society goes, where the market goes as well, but society, and to bring this information into the decision making. So I would say, if not yet in certain corporations, I would envision being a key critical role at shaping strategy, direction, vision, values, which is of at least as important as the products itself or services.
Good. Before I let you go, how can people find you, get in touch, seek advice from Carlota?
So they can get in touch definitely on LinkedIn, and as well very near to the wonderful city of Girona. If someone drops by, can also, of course, join me face to face and have also another candid conversation. But definitely on LinkedIn is the fastest way to get in touch. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. So now it's time for the last piece of each episode, which is my take on the key highlight of today's conversation, which is something I'm going to repeat because I already asked you a couple of times about it. I think that the key highlight today is that a critical mandate for corporate affairs is to bring the political, social, and employee dimension into company decision making as early as possible. So with that said, thank you, Carlota, for the great conversation. Your passion is obvious to everyone who is willing to listen deeply to what you need to say. And I cannot see anything but great success going forward for you and for HIPRA and your company. You are definitely helping set the standard for many to follow. And everybody else, before we go, quick reminder that if you guys enjoyed the conversation, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube, and share it with your network. Thank you, and until next time.